Hi, and welcome to week 3, where we will be talking about the biology of aging. Moody and Sasser set this topic up as a controversy, and I find that kind of interesting because in a lot of ways there's really no controversy about the fact that we're aging, but the controversy comes in as far as the opinions of biologists and gerontologists about what exactly does happen to our bodies when we age. But one thing is for sure, there is no universal consensus about what causes the aging of our bodies. And there's a controversy about whether or not aging should be considered or treated as a disease. The medical community tends to think about aging as something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be cured. Gerontologists say, no, that's not how we need to look at aging. We need to look at aging as a process, as a part of the life course, and we need to help people understand ways that they can age in a healthier, more productive way. Scientists do believe that we can influence our aging experience and that it's not all driven by our DNA. And one of the things that we know for certain as a fact is that we are making grounds in this area in our ability to reduce the prevalence of frailty in older adults. And if you remember the concept of compression of morbidity, that means how can we help people live longer but help them to live in a healthier way? We are making gains in that, and studies have shown that the frailty of older people has actually been declining over the years. So that's very good news. I want to start off also with a couple of concepts that I want to make sure that you're aware of. First of all, there is a concept called the rate of living concept, which is connects metabolism and longevity and states that they are very closely correlated. So the faster an organism's metabolic structure is, the shorter their longevity will actually be. So that's one thing that is somewhat universal, is that metabolic activity is tied into and closely correlated with longevity. Also, a concept that's called Gompert's Law, which is found on page 57 of your textbook. And essentially, Gompert's Law tells us and looks at death rates. And for contemporary humans, our death rate doubles about every 8 years. And this pattern is known as Gompert's Law. In other words, a 38-year-old is about twice as likely to die as a 30-year-old, and a 46-year-old is 4 times more likely to die than a 30-year-old. So it essentially tells us that the older we get, the more prevalent it is for people to die at the age of 46 than die at the age of 30. It's more prevalent for people to die at the age of 85 than at the age of 70. So there is some mathematical formulas here related to aging. And it really does make some logical sense that the longer you live, the more chance there is that you're going to die versus a person that's 4 years or 8 years younger than you. So that's one concept I want you to be sure to understand. What is normal aging? Normal aging can be defined as an underlying, time-dependent biological process that, although in and of itself is not a disease, it involves functional loss and susceptibility to disease and death. So it's an underlying, time-dependent biological process is what normal aging is considered to be. So it's something that every individual is going to experience. In fact, every member of every species is going to experience biological aging in this way. But there are a lot of theories that attempt to define what is happening in this underlying time-dependent process. And so I'm going to go through with you what some of those theories are. And they begin to be discussed in your textbook on page 59. So the first one is called the wear and tear theory. And essentially, this theory sees aging as a big result of chance. The body is constantly being worn out, and thousands of cells die, and thousands of cells are replaced, and damaged cells are repaired. But like any components of any type of machinery, those parts are going to, or basically the whole structure is going to wear out at some point. So in other words, you can replace a muffler on your car, but at some point that car is simply going to wear out, and it doesn't matter if you have a new muffler on your car. That car is going to have a point in time where it's no longer going to function. And that's what the wear and tear theory is suggesting for our aging process. That it's essentially a wearing out of our bodies. Really kind of makes sense to me. The somatic mutation theory of aging relates aging to the damage that happens to cells primarily as a part of radiation. And as a result, the cells mutate or experience genetic changes. One of the problems with this theory is that it would seem to suggest that we might have higher rates of cancer because of this. If our cells are so susceptible to damage by radiation, that would indicate that we would have higher levels of cancer. And interestingly, areas where there were higher levels of radiation, such as in Hiroshima, Japan, where the atomic bomb went off, you would think that there were higher rates of cancer there, but there aren't. So some problems with the somatic mutation theory of aging. The accumulative waste theory of aging points up to the buildup of cell waste and products and other harmful substances. The accumulation of waste interferes with cell metabolism. So it's really about cell waste and the accumulation of cell waste in our bodies. The autoimmune theory of aging is that our immune system is ultimately going to become defective and can no longer distinguish between foreign bodies and our own cell bodies, our own tissues. And the body may begin to attack itself. So the autoimmune theory is related to, obviously, the decline of our immune system and the susceptibility of our body and our tissues to disease and other processes. The aging clock theory is basically that our aging is programmed in our bodies, pretty much like a clock that is ticking away from the time that we are born. We know that as a part of our human biological development, there are points in our lives where certain things happen to our bodies, such as puberty. We know that at a certain point in time, all males and females are going to experience puberty. And women are going to experience menstruation, and then they're going to experience menopause. So there are certain points in our lives where things are just programmed to happen, just like a clock going off. And so this theory is subscribing the same thing to aging, is that it's just a part of our our biological clock. And everybody's clock might be set a little differently, but it's just a part of the ongoing ticking of our bodies moving forward in time. The cross-linkage theory of aging, it gets a little complicated, but it's about the accumulation of cross-linking compounds in the collagen of our body that eventually becomes stiff, and our body becomes less adaptable. It loses its ability to essentially fight off diseases, and so the cross-linkage theory is pretty much related to problems within our collagen, of the collagen that links everything together in our bodies. The free radical theory of aging is essentially a byproduct of oxygen metabolism in our cells. Free radicals are highly reactive and toxic when they come in contact with other cell structures. So it generates biologically abnormal molecules. So it's the key thing to remember there is that free radical theory on aging is related to oxygen metabolism in our system. And finally, the cellular theory of aging argues that aging ultimately results from a progressive weakening of our ability for cells to divide, and an eventual weakening, if you will, of the exhaustion of our genetic material. So one of the things that you should understand with all of these theories is that not any one of these theories are going to fully explain why or how our bodies age. And in some ways, it kind of makes sense that it could be a little bit of all of these things and not just one of these things. It might be that it's different from person to person. So one person might have more problems in one particular area than the other. And it kind of makes sense because you see 95-year-old people who are still out running marathons. Well, clearly their body isn't suffering as much from wear and tear as maybe other people do. So, so that's just one thing to know. These are all theories and all probably have some level of truth related to how our bodies are biologically aging. There's an article in this week 3 folder from the Pew Research Center, which I'd like you to be sure that you read. And it is a research that was done about longevity and how long do people really want to live. And it begs the question, I think, about how do we make good decisions about how we spend the resources, our precious resources, on research? And should we be spending these resources on helping people live longer lives for the sake of just being able to live longer? Or should we be spending our resources in a way that helps people with achieving compression of morbidity, helping people live long, but helping them live healthier for a longer period of time? So read that Pew Research article. I think you'll find the results of that article somewhat interesting, and we will be talking about the results of that article in our next class. And then finally, the video that is in your folder is from a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Sullivan, who does a really great job, I think, of articulating and putting into sort of layman's terms the biological process of aging. And he brings up 2 concepts that I want you to pay attention to in that video. The first one is how he defines entropy and how he relates the concept of entropy to aging. So make sure that you pay attention to that part of the video. And then he also refers to aging phenotypes. And there are I believe it's 47 aging phenotypes that dictate, if you will, how our bodies fall apart. So there's cardiac phenotypes, and there's neurological phenotypes, and there's nervous system phenotype, and there's congestive pulmonary phenotypes. So what they've done is they have defined these phenotypes and kind of locked in on each one of these phenotypes to really understand what people can do to prevent these phenotypes from happening. And he also talks about the fact how often these phenotypes are paired together. So basically, somebody who has diabetes is also likely to have heart disease, or somebody that has congestive obstructive pulmonary disease is also likely to be very susceptible to pneumonia. So these phenotypes are often paired with each other, and I find that to be also a very interesting part of the video from Dr. Jonathan Sullivan. I want to just check and make sure that I've covered all of the takeaways from this. A couple of the other things that Dr. Sullivan talks about is that the anti-aging progress does not exist. There is no way to stop aging. And this ageist language that we hear on commercials and we see in magazines that say, stop the aging process, take this pill or use this cream or ointment and stop aging. We're nowhere near that happening. So he is concerned about this conception that people might have that we think we can just take a pill and fix aging. Well, we can't do that. So the anti-aging progress that people think that we've made in this country hasn't happened. We can influence the process of our aging, and it's not all tied into our DNA. And our perception about aging is definitely clouded by ageism language. So how we think about aging is very much influenced by what we hear and see all around us. So I think that covers it for week 3. And you know where to find me if you have any questions or concerns. I look forward to talking with you soon. Thanks so much.